There are a lot fewer two-parent families.
What's worth more, a dollar today or a dollar tomorrow?
Almost nobody gets out of love alive.
Prisoners' rights is out of sight, out of mind.
Is your brain on God?
You ain't ready to
There are discussions
how
as
they thought
black families have to have them.
What's worth more, a dollar today or a dollar tomorrow?
What's
worth more, a dollar today or a dollar
Yeah, so just my first of all, I'm not big on the term like leader because that always suggests that there needs to be a whole bunch of followers, and I'm definitely not cool with the idea of following, especially if you're not doing it with your own with a real clear thought process. If you're just following something and you don't understand what you're following, then I'm never a fan of that. But if we're just going to talk about someone who has information that can help people out. If I just classify a leader as someone who has some information that can help people out, and we're going to use social media as a platform to get that information out, what would be wrong with that in an era where people are, lazy? You're talking about, Ian, people actually not being inspired enough, motivated enough to get up and to go see someone speak, right? In this era, I don't know if it's as easy to get people to do that. So if you got to come up with, alternate strategies, why wouldn't social media be, an adequate starting point? We're not saying that to be the end all be all, but why wouldn't that be an adequate starting point to try to get people to the point where they'll maybe visit?
20, your 20 characters or less generation. That's what. So we are forced now to fit information in 20 characters or less, right? Which means that people are not willing to read more than 20 characters, right? When we're talking, we're not talking about what we are right here. We're talking about the general society, right? That's growing up in the social media era. Reading books to them is extremely hard. Attention spans are depleting rapidly because when I look on Instagram or Facebook, I'm scrolling. Everything is right there and then it's gone. It's right there and it's gone. So when I put information out there, it might captivate me for 20 seconds and then it's gone, right? As opposed to if I go and I see something, if I go and I experience something. I give you a perfect example, right? When I go to see my children perform, whatever it is, it may be the most boring shit in the world, but I'm there to watch my kids perform. What do you see? What do I see when I see my kids perform? I don't see parents watching their kids anymore, right? I see them on the phone like this, so that they can post maybe a 20-second snippet or a minute snippet on Facebook or Instagram that people will watch and feel like they might have been a part of it, but they weren't experiencing. They only watched it for maybe 20 to 25 to a minute seconds, or whatever the case is, and then it's gone. So the connectivity is no longer there. The social media has removed us from each other. And then when you talk about leadership now, well, how can I lead anybody, right? Or how can anybody really connect with my ideas when they only take root in my mind for maybe a minute or so until something else comes along? And that's why I think what you're putting down.
Let me ask everybody a question real quick, because that made me think. The fact that we all are old enough to understand the difference between analog and digital, we're coming up in a generation that's going to know just plainly digital. Do you think in some ways maybe it's kind of necessary to find new ways and get away to just the idea of leadership in order to inspire the next generation coming up?
Yeah, maybe. Like rather than call it leaders, call it something else. No, I feel like it's still most of the problem is the over dependence on it. I feel like technology is supposed to be the arbiter, and that's always been the thing between you and what you're trying to actualize and do. And this is the over dependency. I would say just change the wording behind it. Maybe it should be a new term. For leader,
got to find something because the term leader, the way it's defined now, it bothers me. I say it all the time, because
But you gotta look at it like this. From the ideas that you give, it bothers someone of your character because you are a leader. But we got to look at the majority of people. I mean, no matter how you want to cut it, masses of people are sheep, and they need someone to lead them. Now, I do feel that they need to hold that leadership to a certain standard or hold him accountable for his
Now here's the
actions.
thing.
Hold on.
Here's the thing, and you're talking about the sheep being able to hold them accountable. So what I'm saying is wouldn't you say that that's some unrealistic expectation for someone who you already classify as a sheep to be able to discern between the two? I would think, and that's like for me, because the reason why I hate using leader, like even it's like the same thing with like boss. Like I hate like even like with the guys with the janitorial side of things, that the guys are out there doing their work. I tell them all the time to stop calling me boss. It's a mentality thing. I want you to start thinking of you being your own man. I don't care if you're part of somebody else's institution or somebody else's platform. You can still have a mindset that, you know, this is your own little thing inside of that. It's just the mindset part of it that I have a problem with.
But all men aren't created equal. Right. You got leaders, you got followers, you got those in between. Just straight up and down. Everybody's not an entrepreneur. I had to learn that at a very young age. You got to have someone that provides the services, and you got to have your customers. Everybody's not.
So with social media, your challenge now is with like say some of your older leaders, black conscious, you know, individuals, for them to stay relevant. You know, would you think that social media could be something to assist them with just staying relevant? Like if that's an issue, being able to stay relevant for the same reasons you're talking about now. If everybody is scrolling, and they're scrolling, but they're constantly seeing other individuals in this scroll, but not seeing certain individuals in this scroll. Like it kind of puts them in a position where you got to depend on your core audience, which, you know, as you know, is shrinking. You know, their core audience is just eventually going to shrink. They have to be able to broaden, get their information out there. I understand social media has its negatives, but there got to be some positives in it. You know, I think of one, like for us, for instance.
I mean, ultimately, I think it's a tool. I think it's a tool like everything else. I think the only part, like especially when we talk about dependency and all that, is we got to realize it's a tool that is still controlled by a certain. We've been saying elite, so I'm gonna stick with it. Like a certain elite group that's still running. So you're still limited. You still gotta, and it still kind of has its own structures. Like Ian mentioned, like, you know, the 20, I forgot what he said, but the 20 things or less, 20 characters less. Even now, like with me and Anya, when we talk about stuff, we realize certain things you gotta do with the hashtag on Instagram in order to push it. And I wonder about effectiveness. That's the problem. Like now it's another thing you gotta juggle. Like if I gotta, you know, it's kind of the hard part because you gotta relate in order to do it. You gotta kind of go by this certain structure in order to do it and still get your message out. So I think that's probably the hard part. That's the part that you got to really try to work out, the balance of it all.
And just to add on to that, Dane, I think this generation needs to learn to separate your scholars and your ones that give information from your leaders. Your Dr. Umars, your Boyce Watkins, those guys are your scholars, your guys that are going to give information. But those guys don't move the crowd. Those are not the guys that, you know, even your most immature mind or unconscious mind say, damn, that dude is cool. I want to follow that dude. I like what he's talking about. I feel like this generation's leaders were supposed to be the rappers. But of course, because of the powers in the music industry, they made sure that they drowned out those voices, you know, that had a powerful message. You know, because I feel like this generation is supposed to be moved by the rappers, man.
That's interesting. I mean, that's interesting. What you think about that? That because I mean, if you think about, you know, some of the more conscious rappers from those wouldn't be those. I don't think those would have been bad guys. Your Public Enemies and stuff like those wouldn't have been bad guys to kind of pattern, you know, yourself after if they was involved in, you know, some kind of entrepreneurial stuff or whatever. That probably wouldn't have been a bad thing. What y'all think about that? The rappers should have been positioned to be the ones that this generation was following.
I think the record labels eviscerated the substance. And I'm gonna say what really started that shit was the NWA, the whole NWA phenomenon of like, yo, once record labels say, oh shit, ever since then they had a whole run of kind of like, you need to always have that street element, or let's emphasize on the vile aspects of the street elements, because there is some beauty in, like, even in the slums or wherever fucked up neighborhood you happen to be, there's still some beauty. There's like that lemonade out of lemons kind of energy that exists. But I feel like post NWA, it got rid of all the substance. It got rid of all the kind of like, you know what, Black empowerment. Now after that, it started becoming like street violence and all that. And I'm not gonna blame them because that's their experience, and I'm not gonna try to separate it. But it's like, yo, as soon as they had that idea, they ran with it.
And we got to remember, that was hip hop's biggest conscious, socially aware movement right there. So the powers that had to be, the powers to be knew, hold on. Where's this whole thing going? This is the voice of the streets. This is the voice of the Black community. We got to redirect this in a way to where we can make money off of it, and we're controlling, the movement of the community. And like you said, gangster rap, in comes gangster rap, and we haven't been back to that conscious movement since.
You know what popped in my head real quick? Because we talking about this leader and we talk about conscious rap. I kind of feel like it probably would be the same thing regardless if conscious rap was in the social media world. Because I'm thinking now, like, the way people move is with incentives. Like, when we talk about most of the things back in the day, most of those people had specific goals that they were actually trying to reach. So at the end what the end result was supposed to be. Right now, I don't think we have that. Like, right now, we don't have a goal. We're talking about leader's supposed to lead you somewhere. If we have just a vague idea about things that we're doing, you're never going to have that structure. So even like in the social media world, I think if you have one thing that you're going at and you keep on pounding it, then you could build more of a followership. But I think if we talk about any vagueness, that's gonna just get lost within the mix of everything.
So if we talk
it's the personality that comes. I just want to add it. It's a personality that comes along with that, because you can have the greatest information ever. You can have the greatest promotion and marketing ever. But if people don't gravitate towards your personality in the social media area, it goes nowhere to me.
Well, when we talking about Black leadership, right? Now you also have to address the state of Black culture in the United States of America, right? And this is why one of the reasons I say, Martin Luther King, I love him as a man and as a brother to us. I hate what he did to Black culture. Because where we are today kind of directly stems from his movement, and how the powers that be used his movement as a tool to strip us of our resources and our mentality to invest in ourselves, right? So what you have today now is this Black culture who has no real identity, right? We don't invest in ourselves because we are Black, right? We have this movement on social media, which is buy Black and be Black and so on and so forth, but you don't really see that manifest in the real world. You don't see it, right? So now when you talk about like even rappers or pop culture taking us in certain directions, what happened with the civil rights movement is they realized we cannot allow them to have control of any resources. Today, we have control over zero resources or zero industries. So what can a Black leader really lead us to in this country, right? It can't lead us to the diamond mine. It can't lead us to the water well. It can't lead us to the radio station, the airwaves, the satellite that controls the waves that control televisions and cable and so on and so forth. So what DB was talking about is a direction. What direction can we really take now in this society, right? We have no real identity of who we are and what we should be.
What do you think about that, Anye?
Those are good points, and that actually brings up another question, an even greater question. Can we make it happen here as a people? Or do we have to make that happen?
We can. We need to focus on a Pan-African aspect. I feel like now, because the borders is kind of destroyed, now communication is much more easier. And if we exchange information And if there's some kind of meme like, yo, all right, we're a people, we're a group, we can create a nation within itself, or we could find ways of, connecting with our sisters and brothers in the African continent and be like, you know what, we could kind of build
some
something.
of that also involves taking over the power structure. Some of that would be having to recapture a lot of the culture that we no longer have or we're no longer in control of, which I believe can happen. It just is.
I don't believe it can happen here.
I don't think so.
I don't believe.
I don't think it's hopeless, yo.
You
Y'all
know,
don't need to make it sound
I don't believe.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking
I-
about because I'm not sure that it's hopeless. I don't necessarily. I haven't gotten to that point because I haven't seen what I have subscribed to as far as the solution. I haven't seen it put into place yet. Until that shit is implemented, tried, and failed, I won't feel like it's hopeless. And what I'm talking about is motherfuckers getting up, doing their own shit, coming together as a group, and building something. I don't see us do that.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, brother.
Here's the
Tulsa,
question.
Oklahoma,
Wait.
and then
You know what? So here's the thing.
yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait.
The thing about Tulsa, Oklahoma, I always hear that reference. The thing about it is that even after that situation, they still was able to get their money back up. The thing that ended up ruining a lot of Black communities was desegregation. That's when we had the opportunity to now move away from the Black money. So it's still the mind state. You know what I mean? It's not the fact that they're going to destroy us. It's our own mind state.
Let's talk about.
But they also are going to destroy us, though. You know what I mean? So that's that. You know what the difference is? Well, people will say that, like, oh, well, you look at the Indians, you look at the Arabs, you look at the Koreans, you look at the Japanese. They all do it. But the biggest difference between them and us, right? And this goes to leadership too, is that first they were able to shape their own culture in their own land by their own rules. So somebody came to invade them. Somebody came to invade them, but it was on their own land. And if they defeated them, they had their own interpersonal issues that they worked out through themselves. Another thing, they also have wealth. They got wealth to draw on, right? If they can always go back to the drawing board. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it gets too crazy here for Koreans, they'll go back to South Korea. If it gets too crazy here for Chinese, they'll go back to China. When it gets too crazy here for us, when Ayanna Jones is getting shot in her sleep, right? And it's being called a good shoot, it gets too crazy here for us, stuff like that happens. We ain't got nowhere to go. We ain't got no one no resources to pull from. So it's a lot to unload in that, man.
I still think that's the idea of Pan-Africanism. It's the connection. I'm not saying that it's not something that we could just do on our own, even though I do believe there is some truth in that. I think the fact is when we talk about culture, sometimes we leave out the American culture because of what was done with us here. I'm from Jamaica. What was done to y'all here, I got some different shit. I got different problems. But the fact is that that's still part of us. The fact is, even though our culture for a long time wasn't the main culture, we still had a culture. The thing is that they hijacked the culture. So the problem now is hijacking the culture back. Now it's also mixing that culture, because when we take Pan-Africanism and we talk about here, our Pan-Africanism is different from Afro-Cuban or Afro-Puerto Rican. Like there's different ideas of Pan-Africanism. There's different ideas of culture. It's still getting back to that culture that I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's still there. And the fact is, if you have that culture, no matter where you are, it don't even matter. It's building that strength right then and there, and then taking care of the power structure.
Man. If you want to talk about Tulsa, Black Wall Street, right? We had a guest up here before, Ray, and off cam, we kind of got into that discussion because he feels the same way, that for us to be able to just say we're going to do our own thing in this country is like impossible. He says it's just not going to happen. And he referenced Black Wall Street to say when it happens, they come and destroy us. But that was then, 1921, right? I want somebody here, who feels like, that we couldn't, pool our resources and do our own thing, to tell me give me something specific that would happen today that they could destroy a Black Wall Street if it existed today. Who that tell me something. Just give me an idea. Something that's gonna go over, that's gonna go over well.
Well, they to be honest with you, they don't have to destroy something physically, because they've already implanted this detrimental mentality into pretty much most of all of us since we were children. Okay, so if all we've been fed since we were children was subliminal self-hate, if all we've been fed was, I can't trust another black man, if all we've been fed is envy and jealousness, that's gonna stop us from even starting to build. And they know these things have been implanted in us, which makes it so hard for us to build. Just to tag off of what E was saying, just pointing to those other groups of people, you know, another thing is they haven't went through what we've been through, you know, that stops us from getting even to a point of another Black Wall Street.
I don't think it's a difficult thing to do once the mindset is achieved. Once you got the mindset that you're just gonna go out, create your own shit, you have a certain purpose, you're gonna pool resources with other like-minded people. Like, I think once you start thinking that way, what is there to stop you, honestly? Because I keep hearing
what's there to stop you is the core of who you were built to be, which is this person that has a ton of self-hatred for his own.
Once we get past that, though, once we get past the,
then you still have the power structure, right?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think we got to get to the power structure first. We got to get to that before anything. We got to get to the fact that,
man, you talking about war. That's what you talking about. You talking about war. Because that's the only way you dismantle the power structure, because power don't never concede power willingly. Right? America was built off of that. That's what America was built on, the idea that what you're talking about. We are going to buck the power structure and create our own war. Revolutionary war. That's what it was. Civil war, same thing. We are going to buck the power structure. We got to dismantle slavery as a power structure and usher in the Industrial Revolution, war. That's what we're talking about. So numbers wise, we don't have that. We don't have any of the iron mines or the copper mines or any of the mines that will allow us to amass weapons, right, to fight a war, right? We don't have resources in this country. So we cannot say, hey, we're gonna win.
That's the only thing I realize, because you're talking about physical resources. For me, the main resource has always been humans. It's always been human labor more than anything else. It's been the mind state. My thing is, and I don't disagree. I maybe especially in the capitalistic world, where consumerism and you know pay is king. I believe there are different kinds of wars to fight besides physical. Ultimately, it's just a matter of the combining. It's a matter of, like, put it like this. I have 4 brothers in front of me that are strong brothers. You know what I mean? Strong-minded, entrepreneur to a certain extent. I cannot believe that, you know, in myself, knowing the circle of people I got around me, that the mind state is not there. It's just the communication to the other people. It's just to the sheep that everybody always talk about. You know what I mean? It's driving them in some way, somehow, to building that community center.
How do you get it? How do you get around the Gaddafi situations, right? How do you get around that? Like we can focus on ourselves all that we want and say all these brothers here. We can bring together 1 million brothers, Million Man March, and 1 million sisters, 2 million Black people march, right? 24, however many million you want to bring together, and say we just gonna do our own thing. But then that's ignoring the beast that's out there. Exactly. That's the power structure. And the power structure is not just going to say, you know what, let them rock. No, that's never going to happen. The power structure will never just say.
I mean, unfortunately, and this is the unfortunate part, and I know this is the part that people are not going to mix with, is that unfortunately in a place like America where there is different nationalities, it's not going to be just one nationality that does it. But you have to get yourself in the mix. Unfortunately, you have to get yourself in the positions to actually have, and I'm talking economically more than anything else, because you're talking about Gaddafi and all that. That's a power structure that we have a long way, like even in our own countries where it's predominantly Black, that doesn't necessarily mean you have control of the power structure because you don't have control of all the resources. So when I'm talking about economically here, you got to build economically in order to even get there, or politically to even get there. You have to do other structures in order to get that power structure. before we
Listen
even
to
talk
this.
about all of
What
that.
I'm saying is, I'm not talking about, like, me personally. I'm not talking about taking over the country. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about just being. No, but what I mean is, I say that to say, like, of course, you know, there's going to be, the power structure is going to be in place. Does that necessarily mean that we, let's say the five of us, couldn't come up with a plan that where the money that we generate on a regular basis, we appropriate some of it for something else? The power structure ain't got nothing to do with that. This conversation we having and the agreement that we'll take 10% of what we make, and treat it like a tithe, and we'll put it to it.
I mean, even small scale, man. You could do that. You could do that in your
But that's what
community.
I'm
Small
talking.
scale.
That's
We're
exactly
thinking
what I'm
big. We
talking
don't
about.
even have small scale.
But that's cool if you're talking small scale. But we talking about Black leadership, right? We talking about leading Black culture to something else, to elevating it, right? Beyond this past 400 years of basically mental and physical enslavement. So that's what we're talking about, right? Getting the chains off. And if we want to take the chains off, right? When you take somebody's freedom, it's taking it physically, mentally, and spiritually, and they still hold it. We got to go get it back, right? That means you got to have a base of operations, right? In order to formulate your strategy that is free from infiltration. Like if you try to set up that base of operations right here in Brooklyn, well, this is an acid pit. This is in the enemy territory.
No,
how you gonna do that? That's not gonna work. You got to go elsewhere in order to do that. You got to set that base of operations up somewhere.
I don't know, because if we're talking about building physically, you kind of need to build the people around you, and I think that could be done. You got to do small before you go big in the first place. So you got to start with your community, if it's your own block.
You talking about silent but deadly? That's what you talking about,
or
right?
How about like, I can see us, the example you gave of setting up operations in Brooklyn. Now, say that would be if we were trying to do things different than what the United States has set up, like legally. I'm talking about working within what the United States allows citizens to do. We're citizens at the end of the day, right? One thing that, again, my man Ray, I wish he was here, that he so eloquently explained to us, is that that's what the issue is with us when you compare some of the other your Chinese, your Arabs, or whatever. They're not citizens, so at any time the United States can give them resources or give them access, give them opportunity, because if they get out of line and not doing things in a manner that the United States wants them to do it, they can send their ass out of here. That's not an option that they have for us. So, and he explained that that's one of the biggest reasons for the struggle, for this political struggle, but I still believe that if we work within what the United States has legally for us to do with business, we could be we could live better than we live now. Just put it like that. Is what I'm saying. And we wouldn't have to worry about, white supremacy or whatever, because we're working within what it is that's offered here.
Well, I think they'd allow us to maintain comfortably until we become a threat to the power structure. Now, just going back to solutions.
I would say let's deal with the Gaddafi issue where we get to the Gaddafi levels, rather than saying, yo, this shit's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like, we can't say this shit could always happen. And most of the time, courage is ignorance of the consequences. Right. So fuck it. Like yo, let's build this. Let's build it up.
You know what though? But we've tried it though. That's the thing. We've tried it. And it's not just Tulsa. There are other Black Wall Streets that existed too in Georgia as well.
I want to talk about the time period though too, Ian. I want to talk about the
So even within the time period though, so even we talking about different time period, how much has really changed, right? How much has really changed? How have we gained anything? So when we look at it that way, have we made steps forward, or have we really made steps backwards? I believe
to me, again, that goes back to the mind state, and that's the hardest part. That I can't even talk about. I have a solution for it because that has stayed the same to me for the most part throughout all of it.
How do you change that while still existing here, where that is the entire existence of
You know,
us, right? How
but
do you
I honestly feel like that could be everywhere. So that we got to do it some way, somehow. I cannot tell you. I can only try to do it the way I do it. I try to do it through my art. I try to do it with you seeing yourself bigger than what you are. You know what I mean? That's the only way I could personally do it. I don't know how anybody else do it. But the fact is, you could go someplace else, and now it becomes, say you go to Africa in certain parts, now it becomes, especially, I'm not even gonna go there, but especially now you become an American in Africa. That could lead to some problems as well, depending on where you are, because you have another part of your identity. You might got the racism out, but you still have some kind of prejudice there. Like it's still you, it's still the mind state of who you are as a Black person, as a Black American that we're talking about everybody here right now. And there's certain things you gotta try to break away. It's hard. I'm not even gonna lie like it's hard, but you have to.
Same with the mindset. I truly feel that and a lot of these adults are just done for. So you have to put that focus to the children. It has to be in another land. So for example, if you were to take it to Africa, we would have to set up private schools for children so that we're teaching them from day one full liberation. Not just we're just trying to maintain here in America, but no, we want full liberation, and we need to teach all of the elements to those children from day one. So now we're building up a whole nation of heroes and sheroes that they know about economics, they know about warfare, they understand our history and our culture, and the things that they need to do for us to move as a cohesive unit together. Otherwise, you're still dealing with.
And let me tell you about what you just said too. I'm gonna build on that because I have two sons, right? And my first son started off homeschool. My first son is a certified genius, right? His IQ is like 167 or something like that. He's on that. Skipped the grade in school. That I'm not really even boasting about that.
No, I fucks with that.
What I'm saying,
I fucks with that.
He's an extremely intelligent. He's an extremely intelligent boy, right? And in my household, I teach him about like the cities of Africa before slavery, all of this stuff that we talk about. We talk about Timbuktu and the scholars. We talk about Mansa Musa, the wealthiest man ever to live on earth. We talk about all of this stuff. The other day, I'm having a discussion with my son, right? And we're talking about cities, and somewhere along the line, Africa gets involved, and he says to me, and he goes to public school now because in New York, homeschooling your children is almost damn near impossible, right? He goes to public school now. He says to me, well, Africa doesn't have any roads. This is after years of conversations of me having with my son about Africa and its advancements and what's going on in it, showing him actual picture of Accra, so on and so forth,
right,
which has skyscrapers. He said to me, Africa has no roads. Most of it is just dirt. And that's because he lives here.
Yeah.
Right. So when he leaves the house, right, he is subject to the American philosophy, the Westernized philosophy. That is what's shaping his mind. And he will have to break out of that.
I agree, but I also think there's two parts to that. The fact that you said you was here, you was in Georgia, you homeschooled. Anya, I know your kids are homeschooled. I know y'all both teach. And Georgia being a big homeschool area itself, one of the reasons is because of that kind of poisonous. And so there are people that's taking accountability for it, that are trying to do things. You know what I mean? So it's not to say that it still cannot be done. It's that we got to do it through certain avenues. It's not saying that none of that is there. The poison is not there, that the image is not there, but at the same time, we gotta have to take certain control of that in order to actually do it. The fact your son is blessed to have you in order to correct them when those situations happen. That's part of leadership, having somebody outside of this mainstream commentary that's coming into his brain. You need that. I mean, and I say that to say that almost anywhere you go, you might still have that same mentality. So even if he goes to Africa and realizes something else, he could have a different aspect on a different part of Africa. Otherwise, it's still the mentality is you got to break away.
Let me be honest with you guys, man. I don't know about y'all, man, but I kind of like the way of living that living in the United States can provide, or the opportunity to achieve a certain way of living. Let me say it that way. I don't know about any place else, right? So when I get into these conversations, it's more about, me, people who look like me from the communities I come from, just being able to have access to those opportunities to live the way certain other ethnic groups live in this country. That's how I look at it. I can't get into I haven't really gotten into the talks of really going back to maybe Africa or whatever, just because honestly, man, I don't just be serious. Like I said, my kids didn't grow up in the same type of environment that I grew up in. And we're just talking about 20 so years, 20, 30 years, as far as the gap between me and my sons. And we're so different. Can you imagine the difference between, like, when you're talking about thousands of years as far as, identifying what that is? It's I can't expect anybody here in this country to adopt to just that move back to Africa thing. Like that's what I'm saying. So if you can't do that, what are we going to do in the meantime? Why not let's try to work on living better in this country, trying to get access to better the opportunities cause, go ahead. I'm sorry, Anya. Go ahead, say that part.
It's just like the examples that E gave, the distractions and being ultimately in your opposition's backyard. How can you ever fully focus your children to go on into this new world with one agenda when there's so many distractions, whether it be the billboards that they see outside, whether it be, this Euro-based education that they're being taught in school, whether it just be the kid that looks just like him that's being taught the complete opposite of what you're teaching.
Let me ask you another question real quick. Let me ask a hypothetical question, because we started this conversation with social media. Wouldn't that be the same case with social media no matter where you go? Like the same idea of distractions, like you constantly going to have? And I think about like an example, just an analogy real quick. There was a village I heard about, I think it's like in the Himalayas or somewhere close to that, where they were isolated for a long time. They didn't have TV till like 1994. And it was supposed to be like, they say the main currency there was happiness. When they started getting TV, they started getting these ideas of the outside world. You start seeing a shift in the younger people, because now they're seeing this other aspect outside of their village, where they see the different kind of opportunities coming in. And now we're starting to build a mindset like, oh, I want a little bit more. Right. So when we talk about the fact of globalization, we talk about the fact now we have these other avenues or other windows into the world. It goes back to the same thing with social media, where it's easily to get distracted.
Hold on, wait. Along with the distraction.
Okay, now let me just back off that. Let me piggyback off that. We are men in this room, as men, as fathers. I feel like we can't have that mentality, especially with our seeds, to say, hold up, social media just is what it is. It's gonna influence you. No, fuck that shit. I teach my children from day one. This is negative. This is what's positive. This is what uncivilized people deal with. This is what civilized people deal with. This is what's productive. This is what's unproductive. So they always come up within that mind frame of hold up. Dad always taught us it's a difference between the two, so that we can be able to point out what's useful for our productivity and what's useless and can become very unproductive for our detriment. So I feel like that's very important too.
So that, like, tell me,
it goes back to leadership.
With the distractions, right? Social media, all of that. Tell me what would life without this Western influence look like? Like, I'm talking about for Black people. But see,
I don't think anybody would have a real determination on how that.
How could
Wakanda?
now, wait. Question: are you being serious or are you joking? Because I had a Wakanda comment coming up.
I'm halfway serious, man, because minus vibranium, right? Minus vibranium and minus the suit and all of that. Without Western influence, right? What's in Africa? All the resources known to man that you need to live. If you're talking about oil, you got it. If you're talking about gold, you got it. If you're talking about diamonds, you're talking about salt, you're talking about copper, you're talking about water, you're talking about trees, rubber, whatever you need, it's all there. So without Western influence, right? And eventually, if we start to create our own economy, right? The countries of Africa start to come together and maybe pool their resources. Maybe you do have a Wakanda. I don't know. But you know, it's a possibility. And today it might still be a possibility, but it includes war. That's the only thing now, is because you got to get rid of the Western influences that now have a chokehold.
Well, not just Western. You're talking about Asian influence too. There's a lot more.
Asian influence now is really Western influence, right? Because what's the catalyst to the world conquest?
So what I mean
starts in Western Europe,
I'm on
right?
That book, and I'm going to say I do have some friends, however the fuck I got them, whatever, but friends who are actually in Africa. So now, who's to say that this social media hasn't played Africa as well, or certain areas in Africa? Like, who's to say that going to Africa means you're just going to get away from this social media distraction? Or look at it, seeing how Facebook is, you know, worldwide. You know, how we're gonna get away from it.
Well, let me tell you from a first-hand account, because I was in Africa like maybe 3.5 years ago. So I can tell you specifically what I saw. Okay, I was actually surprised that, and I was in Nigeria, we actually are embracing a lot of our culture, our music, because like when I went out to little clubs and lounges and stuff, I thought they'd be playing American music. They was playing their own music. Well, we were playing our own music there. Another thing I wanted to point to was that, okay, a lot of the brothers from there really want to connect with a lot of brothers and sisters from here. They've been fed that bait that, oh, we don't care about them and we living just as good as the white folks over here. We ain't trying to reach back. A lot of brothers and sisters were actually very surprised that I came there. Brothers was telling me, why did you come here? Why did you come here? I said, this is my home. This is my roots. This is what we come from. It was like, but we heard that black people is living just as good as white people and they don't care about this place. I was like, you're wrong. I was like, get some black people that love this place and that would love to know that they have a home here. And to be honest with you, we catching hell in America and we're dying in America. But black people just feel like if they come here, they won't be accepted. And most to all of them told me, tell them to come. Tell them to come here. I can tell you from my own experience, I was treated like a celebrity just because I was from America and I came back. Everybody's listening.
Here's the thing, though, but there's a difference between that visit. When you actually got down there, what would your way of life be like, is what I'm saying. Like, if we take away, because we're talking about a lot of what the distractions of social media, how it kind of causes issues with, black leadership and stuff, right? If and you guys mentioned, like getting completely out of the situation. So what would life look like in Africa? What would it look like? Like what would your life be? Not as a visitor, not as a celebrity from the States with an American passport, right? We're talking about you are now here in Africa. And you ain't I don't know your finances, but if you ain't going there as no prince, tell me what's your life gonna be like? What are you gonna do? What are you going to do for a living? How are you going to generate income? Where are you going to live? Like, those are the things I ask.
True indeed. So,
number
one, as an entrepreneur, a lot of business opportunities are open to you because you are from America, number one. Because everybody feels like, oh, he's from America. He got the connects. He can get electronics, cars, whatever from America. So people want to do business with you. From a living aspect, I got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can live just as good as you can live here, or even better for a lot less. Or you can live like stereotypical Africa from National Geographic too, because I saw that as well too. But I got 100. I saw it all. But I just don't see how a person from America would be living in poverty in Africa with all of the opportunity that's there for you. Everybody they're literally coming to you, throwing ideas to you because they're saying, hold up, you're from a place that's at the tip top of the world. You have to have that hustler mentality. I know you're a businessman. I'm trying to make money with you. And if I don't know how to, I'm going to bring somebody else that has resources that can come with me and we can make money. We can make an opportunity with you.
Well, I tell you what, man, I'm still with the thought that, I'm going to try to do some things here, try to rally some people, man, and hopefully we can build another Black Wall Street and hold on to it like what.
Real quick, I just want to throw this one point. I'm sorry, Jay. I know you're about to cut it out. I think we should all connect. I think the people that want to go back to Africa and build resources need to connect to the ones that stay here. We got to build that communication regardless, either way.
All right, yeah.
That's
So
all I
let's
got.
build it, man, and hold this shit. Hold on to this shit like Wakanda, like they do in Wakanda. But folks, if you like any of his content, like, share, subscribe, and comment. Listen, we need to know what you guys feel about this shit. We got my man Anye, DB, Andy, my bro Ian. Great conversation, fellas. Reality gurus. Take care.